This is the greatest era to be alive. Don't live a life that gets you to 80, 90, 100 years old where you're sitting there and saying, I wish I did, I wonder if I did. Don't wish. They had an excuse, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. It wasn't practical. You couldn't do what we can do. This did not exist. Please take advantage. Please take advantage of this existing. This is the greatest time to be alive, and you live in a place where this country lives its life here. And the cost for you to enter it and do something for yourself and your family, $0. I do not want to hear that you don't have money. I don't want to hear that somebody else is further along, because nobody else's life matters. This is an inside game. Inside. And I implore you to take advantage of this very special time, because you have one life. You might as well live it. I was born in the Soviet Union in 1975, a little ways ago. I came to America when I was 3 years old. It was a very challenging upbringing in the first couple of years. 6 family members in a studio apartment. We struggled. We had to learn a new language. We started from the bottom, no question. My mom stayed home and raised the kids. My dad worked every day, many hours a day. First as a stock boy, putting bottles on the shelf in a liquor store in New Jersey for only $2 an hour. So very humble beginnings, where the Vaynerchuks come from. But entrepreneurship was definitely foundational in the happiness that we were able to create over that period of time. My dad worked quite a bit. Eventually, he became the manager of that liquor store. And that's when we moved to New Jersey, outside of New York City. And that's where I mainly grew up. And that is where my entrepreneurial career began. When the summer days happened and all the kids wanted to play, I wanted to go wash people's cars. I wanted to sell lemonade. I wanted to do business. It was always in me. It's what made me happy. Eventually, after lemonade, I started my first kind of real business. In America, in the 80s, baseball cards, sports cards that people could trade became very big, and I rode that wave. I got very involved. I loved sports, and I loved even more buying packs of cards, getting good cards, and reselling them. Fast forward, I was very good at selling baseball cards. When you're making $3,000 or $4,000 a weekend when you're 14 years old, you've got it. I was good, fine. But then my dad eventually bought a liquor store, and he dragged me into the liquor store when I was 14. I started making $2 an hour, bagging ice. This was huge for me. If I didn't have that transition, all the money I was making as a young kid, it came so easy because I was naturally talented. I think not having that struggle of losing all that because my dad forced me to work in the store and making $20 a day, that really helped me. And I learned a lot in that liquor store. I learned that watching people, and more importantly, understanding people, and most importantly, being empathetic to people, was the best way to build a real business, to build something meaningful. The biggest problem, I'll tell you right now, one of the biggest reasons most people in this room, if they decide to start an entrepreneurial venture, a side hustle, whether you try to sell something in your home, whether you're finally ready to start your podcast on Spotify, whether you're gonna build your Instagram profile or meme page because you want brand dollars, whatever you're up to in this room, the reality is that if you have to put in so much work, but so much of what comes out of people's mouth or what they post is selfish, not selfless. It's what you want. You want them to buy it. You want them to like your post. You want them to follow you. The biggest reason I have the luxury of standing here today is from the wine business to the content I made on YouTube when it first came out, to everything I've done over the last 8 to 9 years in my books, in all my free content. I've always thought, how do I bring more value to you than I get in return? It's very simple. Karma, or doing the right thing, always works. The problem is, most people are impatient. There's too many people in here that are trying to get successful too fast because they want to prove it to their parents. My friends, the number one thing I fear, period, is that people live their lives based on other people's opinions. Living your life predicated on the judgment of somebody else is the great weakness of the human being. Are you prepared to finally get quiet in your head and not allow the opinions of others to dictate your behaviors? I was 18 years old. I'd lived my life, at least the childhood part of my life, without the internet. The biggest thing that excites me, especially in a mature internet market like here, WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Spotify, like, there's so much opportunity and you don't even have to leave your home. There was no building your life, after hours when I was growing up. When you had a job and you had to take care of something, you didn't then start another job because it was late. But now this allows it. The biggest thing that I want to get across in this little moment of this speech is everybody in here is taking this for granted. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, they didn't have this. If you aren't succeeding or attacking your success with this in your hand, then what are you doing? It's funny, I never had a conversation with my dad about me leaving day to day. It just kind of happened. It was like crazy to think about. It was also a time where probably the toughest time in my career was when my dad and I weren't clicking. There was a point where the business got so big and I was getting the credit, and I was starting to get the credit in the press, and I feel like I could have done a better job of giving my dad more credit, but I think at some level I was struggling subconsciously without even realizing it that I owned nothing of it. And now I'm married and here I am at 30, 31, 32 years old. I'm not paying myself a lot of money at all. You kind of wake up and you've put a decade of 15-hour days, 360 days a year into something. You've built something and watched it grow from 4 to 60 million in revenue, and you've never really made more than $150,000 a year. And so that was interesting, and what ended up happening was I just started getting so much of the credit that it started undermining my dad's own feelings for himself. It's almost like he was getting wiped out of history, and it was an interesting, difficult time. The obsession with building the biggest wine retail company in America was fading. And my curiosity about this Web 2.0 evolution of the internet was rising. And I was starting to realize it wasn't that I was a great wine merchant, it was that I was a great communicator. And my career started to shift. Everybody goes through a moment in their life where everything you thought up to that second vanishes, and you realize that there's an opportunity to change the story that you've written in your head for the last 2-3 decades. And I think it's universal. I think there are very few people who don't get to a point at year 20, 30, 35 that don't start debating, wait a minute, is this what I want? Is this where I'm going? Is this how it's playing out? And to me, that is one of the most important moments in one's life. And this is why I care so much about perspective.
Many people look at it as a moment to start to get upset and say, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. And others, regardless of what's happened, use it as an opportunity to write the next chapter. And that is a choice based on what you're consuming and who you're listening to and what's around you that I think about a lot. One of the biggest turning points in my life was a random flight back from wine country, picking up a Business 2.0 magazine, which is not around anymore. And it was an article about fish.com and dog.com and house.com and these people that were squatting names and flipping them for tens of millions of dollars. I don't know what it was about that magazine. I landed, I called my brother. He picked up, I said, what are you doing? It was late on a Friday night. It was his first week in college. And he said, I'm at a party. I'm like, I need you to step outside. He's like, okay, because it was super loud. And he goes, what's up? And I said, I'm gonna change your life. That's what's up. On that flight from San Francisco to New York, reading a random magazine around domain squatting, I decided that I wasn't gonna be in the wine business anymore and I was gonna go all in on this internet thing. I had no money. VaynerMedia started in somebody else's conference room because we had no money for rent.
When I left Wine Library day to day at 34 years old, I had nothing. When I started VaynerMedia, we started it in Buddy Media's conference room because I didn't have dollars to spend on rent. Imagine how early I think you are in your life. Listen, what I can tell you from my career is this repeats over and over and over again. In 2006, I started one of the first YouTube shows, period. It was the longest show on YouTube when I launched it. YouTube wasn't even a year old. I sat in front of a camera and I drank wine for 30 minutes and a lot of people watched it. A year later, Twitter came out and I was one of the first people to move on that. I invested because I got smarter at that point, but I also was one of the first people to amass 1 million followers on that platform. If you pay attention to what happened on YouTube, if you pay attention to what happened on Twitter and then Facebook and then Vine and on and on and on, it's all the same game. In the beginning, if you move quickly, you can get more attention. Most people get frustrated that they aren't first and then they don't go all in because they think they missed it. However, winning on these platforms is a game of being better, not first. Being better comes in two ways. This is where it gets very important, my friends. Being better on putting out content only comes out in two ways. Either entertainment, right? Or information. If you are putting out content on these websites and trying to grow, you want to succeed and build an audience, you either do information, you know what you're talking about, whether it's painting nails, business, wine, sneakers, hair care, I don't care what it is. You either know or you entertain. Entertainment comes in a lot of ways. This is playing out on Instagram. Entertainment comes in being funny. Entertainment comes in being musical. Entertainment and escapism comes in being attractive, being a model. It all plays. If you're lucky enough to have both, it gets really crazy. But if you do not do one or the other, you lose. If you go look at your Instagram account right now and look at the last 10 posts, my question to you is very simple. Did you post those posts for your audience so they could be entertained or informed? Or did you post it for yourself, for your own self-esteem or insecurities? I'm shocked that we are now living at a time where the internet is at scale. The apps that dominate the culture are free. You could literally walk out of here right now and start the process of changing the course of your life if you want. And literally the only thing left now, because the excuse of money and time is over. That's amazing. The fact that money and time have been subsidized by the internet because you can lay in bed and do it at 11 p.m. if you want, and the cost is zero. You don't have to buy a store and open it, like zero. It eliminates all your excuses, and now the question is, why not? Why are you not? This internet thing, it's big. It's real big. We haven't even started. Please understand how lucky, that's the only word I have for it, how lucky you are that you get to live during this era. Right now, anything that comes out of your mouth that is complaining makes your grandfather want to punch you in the fucking face. You understand? Do you understand how much better you have it than every generation before you? This is such a ridiculously special time, and literally the far majority of this room is not going to take advantage of it because of the insecurity of worrying about somebody who they don't even know leaving a comment that they're ugly. The number one thing I learned in the first 20 years of my life, spending more time with old people than most kids, is the biggest thing I fear is regret. Regret is scary. Resentment is very scary. The biggest reason I push kids to do what they want versus what their parents want is because I'd rather them and their parents have 5 or 6 or 7 years of bad than 80. Because it gets very ugly when you're 60 and they're 80 and you lived your life based on what they wanted and now you resent them. It gets real ugly real fast. You live in a culture where parents treat their kids as a property that indicates who they are. Parents are insecure too, and they like their kids closing their gap. We have to start talking about this, because now that it costs zero to start a Spotify podcast, now that you can do that at 9 p.m., now there's nothing left. In 1974, not having money and time was an excuse. In 2019, it is not. And so the only thing left is this. Not this, this. And so I come here today begging, not pleading, not asking, begging you to look yourself in the mirror tonight and ask yourself if you're happy. And people always say, I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what I would do. Yes, you do. You do. You just don't think it would work. You think it's too small. You think it's too silly. You think people would judge you. You know. You're just scared to say it. You know exactly what you would do if you could do it every minute of your life. You may not right now. As I'm saying this, you're like, no, I don't. Gary, I don't. It's because you haven't even allowed yourself to look. This is the time to build businesses and profiles and content around what you enjoy. This is the time. This is the time. And waiting one more day makes no sense to me. So whether you use the momentum of the energy we created today or something else, please don't get older and regret. Please don't watch this exact video on whatever YouTube is in 35 years. You want to hear something weird? Everybody in here right now is actually watching this right now in 35 years. Everybody here right now is actually going to watch this exact talk on video on the internet in 35 years. And I'm going to ask you, did you fuck up or no?